Hello everyone, it's Nita and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you guys about my plans for my May and June TBR. I'm combining both May and June into this video because I know basically every book I don't get to in May, I'm just going to carry on to for June, because all of these books are queer in some way, shape, or form. And my plan is to both read these as like prep for Pride Month, as well as queer books I'm going to read during Pride Month. You know how the joke is that June is Gay Pride Month, and then we've extended it further so that July is Gay Wrath Month? I think instead we should also extend it backwards, and that way May can be Gay Lust Month, Gay Gluttony Month. Either way, I'm hungry for more. Really just more slop, please, is all I'm asking for. I've divided this TBR into 4 different categories for all the different types of books I want to read. So with our intro out of the way, let's get into the video. The first category I have is what I am calling the old-timey gay section, and these are basically the queer classics. The first one of those is The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. This is a book probably a lot of people have had to read in school or as part of like summer reading. I definitely read it in high school, but I think just for fun. It's a pretty iconic story, but for those who are not familiar with it, it follows our main character, Dorian Gray, who has the 3 most important things: youth, wealth, and beauty. And he gets a portrait done of him by his friend Basil, and he kind of like places a request slash like curse on the portrait for him to remain young and for the portrait to grow old in his place. And that ends up actually happening. And now that he's basically been granted a form of eternal life, it sets him down on a path of violence and debauchery, with the portrait then taking on all of the negative aspects of himself. Oscar Wilde is a famously gay author, and there's a lot of like homoerotic subtext in The Picture of Dorian Gray, particularly between Dorian and Basil, who is the person that painted the portrait of him. I really want to reread this book because I don't really remember a ton of what happens in like the middle, since again, the last time I read it was back in high school. And I'm kind of really interested in watching the somewhat bad like 2006 adaptation of this where Ben Barnes plays Dorian Gray, because I know at least in that one they kind of bring the sexual tension of Dorian and Basil to the forefront. And also me and my wife just like Ben Barnes and want to see him in another movie. So I think it'll be very fun for us to check out that movie after I'm done reading this. The other book in this category is Morris or Maurice by E.M. Forster. I feel like it's supposed to be Morris, but my like American brain wants to say it as Maurice, since that I feel like is the more common pronunciation of that name in America. Regardless, this is another historical queer book that was written, I believe, at like the turn of the century, but was not published until like the 1970s, like posthumously, because it features a queer relationship that has a happy ending, which obviously was very like frowned upon at the time. I don't know a ton about like the middle of the book, but I know the general premise follows the main character Morris, who meets this guy named Clive when they are studying together in college. They strike up a romance, but Clive is from like a wealthy family that expects him to eventually marry a woman and like continue on the family line. And it kind of focuses on their relationship, trying to navigate all of societal expectations while still trying to find out where they can find a future for themselves. This is a book I've wanted to read for a really long time. And also recently I've gotten more interested in it because I've seen so many, I don't know if AMVs or like fan cams is the right word for them, but just a lot of like fan-made music videos using scenes from the movie adaptation. I think this is considered one of like the most popular like dark academia queer movies as well. And overall the movie just looks so good, so I'm really excited to watch that adaptation as well as read the book. Okay, now let's move on to the second category I have. And these are books that are part of series that I want to make more progress on. I definitely want to do another finishing series reading vlog, like the one I did in April. I'm currently filming this like as that video is going live, so I don't know how it's performing, but hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun filming it, so I really want to do another one of those vlogs in this month. Like with that video, the TBR is a little bit up in the air, but these are a couple books I picked out that are some contenders for that video. The first one of those is Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice. This book is the 3rd book in the Vampire Chronicles series, the previous 2 being Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat. I can't say too much about this plot, given that it is like the 3rd book in a series, but the main kind of like catalyst or antagonistic force in this one follows a ancient vampire queen who is woken up from like a 1,000-year slumber and is trying to take over the world, with Lestat and the crew getting roped into stopping it. I'm so excited to read this as well. This is another book I read back in high school, and I'm excited to revisit it now, like so long after that fact. I'm also just so excited to get back into this world. In May as well, the 2nd season of the Interview with the Vampire TV show is coming out, and overall I just miss all these characters so much. I'm super excited to obviously continue watching the TV show and then make much more progress in the series once I finally can finish Queen of the Damned, since all of the books past that I never ended up reading. So I'm really excited to reread this book and then make more progress in the series overall. The next book I want to talk about is Flight of Magpies by KJ Charles. This is the third and final book in the Charm of Magpie series, which is a historical queer fantasy romance. I have no idea what this one focuses on, but I think that's also because the synopsis is quite vague, just kind of saying that the main couple is going to be facing their greatest challenge yet. I'm really excited to read this and finally wrap up Crane and Steven's story. I really like them as a main couple, and it will be a little bit sad to have to let them go. But I do know that KJ Charles has like a lot of like side stories that she's written with them, as well as 2 other books that are kind of like companion novels to this series, in that they're set in like the same world but follow different characters. So I think those will be a good like kind of extension if I want to pick up more from this series in the future as well. Next book we are going to be talking about is Nona the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is the 3rd book in the Locked Tomb series, which is an adult kind of sci-fantasy hybrid that focuses on necromancy. This one has a very different plot line with this girl named Nona, who has no idea who she is. She's just like awoken in this body, very poor things coded. And all around her, she's living in this war-torn city and trying to figure out who she is and what is going on. This one takes a bit of a departure and focuses on a bunch of different characters separate from the previous 2 books in the series, but it overall has like very strong like found family vibes, particularly with Nona and 2 other characters that are from the previous books. My wife is actually reading this book right now. She's listening to the audiobook and has been really enjoying it and telling me some of the things that are going on. Since I do know a couple spoilers of what happens at the end of this book, but I don't really know how we're going to like get there, or overall like what the majority of this book's plot is about. But I'm very excited to read this. I love the Locked Tomb series. Gideon the Ninth, the first one, I gave 5 stars, and the second one, Hard the Ninth, I gave 4.5 stars. Although, to be honest, it could have been a 5 stars. I think if I reread it, it probably would be, just because the beginning is a little bit confusing, that it made it not as enjoyable of a reading experience. But once you like get further into the story, you realize just how intentional everything that Tamsin Muir puts in the book is. She's such an amazing writer, and everything is like so perfectly placed. And super interesting that there's a lot to find on like a second or third read through. Anyway, regardless of that, I'm super excited to make progress in this series. Originally, I was going to wait until the 4th and final book got a release date before I started this one. But that was when the 4th book, Alecto, was thought that it was going to come out in 2024. And it's looking more and more likely that it's going to actually be a 2025 release. And I don't think I can wait like over a year for another one of these books. So I think I should just take the plunge and start reading Nona now. Okay, the last book I am adding into this category for that vlog is the 4th volume of Husky and His White Cat Shizun by Meat Bun Who Doesn't Eat Meat. This is a adult Chinese danmei series that overarchingly follows our main character Mo Ran, who in his previous life was this terrible tyrant, but after his death he is reincarnated into this like alternate universe version of his 15-year-old self. And initially he's set upon taking revenge against the person he thinks who has wronged him the most, who was his Shizun or teacher, who is Chu Wanning. But slowly, as he's living out this new version of his life, he kind of realizes that love and hatred kind of may be on 2 sides of the same coin, and the feelings he initially had for Chu Wanning were a little bit misguided. This is the 4th volume, and I think we were about like halfway through the series after I finished this one. At this point in the story, there has been a, I think, 5-year time skip. So Mo Ran is no longer a like 30-something in a like 15-year-old's body. He's now a young man, and he's going to finally start taking action in his feelings towards Chu Wanning. So now that like kind of Mo Ran has gotten over his like own emotional situation, it's going to be more so him trying to focus on showing his affections for Chu Wanning and hoping that Chu Wanning will reciprocate his feelings in the future. I think this book is going to be a good like palate cleanser for that reading vlog. I can get through these quite quickly. They're usually just like a very fun, goofy time. And I'm very unsure as where the series is going to go overall. So I'm really excited to read this, and maybe also the 5th volume if I'm able to fit it in the next couple months as well. Okay, the next books I want to talk about are my historical romances. I overall just love queer historical romances. My like more perfect niche is queer historical fantasy romances. But these ones are just regular historical romances, no magic attached. The first one of those is The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by KJ Charles. This is another KJ Charles book, and I think this and its sequel are the only 2 of her books that are traditionally published, and the rest of hers are just independently published. This one I don't know a ton about. I believe it's a second chance romance between a guy who was just like a commoner, but then he finds out that he's like either the legitimate son or illegitimate son of a nobleman who has recently passed away, and now he's inherited this huge estate that's set on like a marsh, and the marsh is used by a bunch of smugglers as well. And one of those smugglers happens to be the main character's ex-boyfriend. I don't really know that much more about the plot, although when I was looking through a Tumblr tag for I think KJ Charles's works in general, I saw someone say that this book does not have a third act breakup, which is obviously something I'm always looking for in books. So I'm excited to see what exactly this book entails, and if I like it, I'll probably also read the sequel book, which I think is like a companion novel set in the same universe. The next book I wanted to talk about is Don't Want You Like a Best Friend by Emma R. Alban. This is a sapphic historical romance that is kind of pitched as being like a queer parent trap. I believe this is a Regency romance that follows two best friends that are both debuting in society, and they both happen to have single parents that are recently widowed, and they hatch a plot to set up each of their recently widowed parents as a couple. But along the way, while they're trying to get their two separate parents to reconnect, they end up falling in love as well. I think this book sounds so cute, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. I also personally have just realized that I don't really love a lot of like enemies to lovers in general, but specifically with sapphic relationships. And I feel like a best friends to lovers is a much more preferable trope for me. So I'm super excited to see how it's going to come out in this book. It just looks really cute, and I'm really hoping that I end up liking this one. Okay, the last category I have here is my fantasy romance. I also equally love fantasy romance as much as I love historical romance. And I have two books that are both on my physical TBR that I want to read in this category. The first one is A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. This is a adult fantasy romance. I don't really know what the main conflict is, but I believe the setup is that there's two fantasy kingdoms, and the one main character is betrothed to the princess of the other kingdom, but then it gets revealed that he's actually gay. And the kingdom is like, oh, cool, do you want to just marry her brother instead? And he's like, that's an option? So basically it's a political arranged marriage, forced proximity, lots of trauma bonding. I believe there's a plot where some enemy forces don't want the two kingdoms to become united. So there's some sort of political intrigue, assassination attempts going on both members of the new arranged marriage. Overall, it sounds quite interesting. I'm really excited to check this out. And if I like it, I'll probably also read the sequel in the future as well. And the last book I want to talk about today is To Cage a God by Elizabeth May. This is an adult fantasy romance that has a combination MF straight romance as well as an FF romance. I believe this focuses on sisters with magical powers stemming from them having the bones of gods grafted into their body. Honestly, love a good bone magic and also god-based magic plot line. And they're using their heightened magical powers to help a rebellion. The straight romance follows a sister and the leader of the rebellion, and then the FF romance is with the other sister and the princess of the kingdom that they're trying to overthrow. It sounds really good. I'm really excited to, and overall, just read more of my Illumicrate special editions. I really like the cover and overall the design of this book. I think it's really beautiful, and I'm hoping that the content inside is as good as the cover on the outside. So this is a look at some of the books I hope to read in the next 2 months. As always, I should preface I'm quite a mood reader, and this is my set TBR for now, but I have a lot of queer books on my TBR overall, both ones I own and ones I've just wanted to read for a very long time. So there might be a couple other ones that I switch out some of the books in here for, or add onto in the end. But I'll obviously keep you guys updated in my monthly wrap-ups at the end of each month. But overall, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the Storygraph if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time, as well as following me on my Bookstagram, which is also linked in the description. But that is going to be it for me today. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video.